have two sons who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Would you maintain this new policy as president, or do you agree with Senator Santorum?
No, I completely disagree with Rick. This is America, and we've made enormous progress. And I don't care if you're a man or a woman. I care if you're good and capable of doing the job. If you can do the job, don't lower standards, don't lower the criteria. But if a woman is capable of doing these jobs, there is no reason why we should deny a patriot who wants to serve and help defend our country that right.
Senator Santorum?
So what you just said is you agree with me. Because that's exactly what I said. I said if you can't do the job, you shouldn't be able to, you shouldn't have the position.
No, you said you would reverse the policy which excluded women from those jobs, whether or not they were able to do that. No, that is wrong.
I did not say that, George. I mean, you may have heard that, but I didn't say that. What I said was, if they can, in fact, do the job that any other person can do, I would allow them to do so. But if they cannot, I would reverse the policy. And what happened here is there were many studies done, particularly in the Marine Corps, which begged this president not to move forward with this because people are going to get killed as a result of it. The president went forward anyway. That is not looking out after the best interests of anybody, including women, in that frontline position.
Governor Pataki, do you have a final response?
Yeah, I think what Rick said is very different from what he said initially, which was that he would reverse the policy that gave women not the right but the opportunity to serve in combat. They can only do it if they're fit and capable and meet the same standards as men. So to reverse that policy and deny a woman who is prepared to risk her life to defend our freedom and is capable of doing everything a man could do is not the right thing for America in the 21st century. By the way, you see in Iraq, the Peshmerga, the Kurds, many of their top fighters are women. This is the 21st century. We're not radical Islam. We want to give women the opportunity to do whatever they are capable of achieving in this country.
Governor Pataki, let me stick with you. Governor Pataki, U.S. Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl now facing a court-martial after leaving his base in Afghanistan, getting captured by the Taliban. Donald Trump has called for his execution. The former House Speaker John Boehner says he's innocent until proven guilty. Where do you stand?
Well, of course he's innocent until proven guilty. I happen to believe he's guilty. The military did a very clear and long study as to whether or not he deserted in the face of the enemy, and they are now court-martialing him. I don't think he should be executed. I do think he will have a fair military trial, not a civilian trial, at which time, assuming he's found guilty, as I think he would, he will be sentenced appropriately. But there's a bigger issue here. This administration has failed to protect us because they have treated radical Islamists as Americans who should be tried in civil court. That is ridiculous. They are enemy aliens engaged in terror against America. And by the way, the fact that this president is now threatening to close Guantanamo Bay when we know that time after time, terrorists he released are involved in a high-level capacity helping ISIS and al-Qaeda is a disgrace. Ask Hillary Clinton, will she keep Guantanamo Bay open so that Americans can be safe and terrorists kept from going back to the battlefield?
Senator Graham, where do you stand?
Well, I stand unique, having been a military lawyer for 33 years. I've been a defense attorney, a prosecutor, and a military judge. Mr. Trump, you don't have to speak about everything that's not required. I would make sure that everybody had a fair trial. Does that make sense to you? We're at war, folks, and this stuff has to stop. It's bad for morale to hear somebody wanting to be commander-in-chief that would deny due process to somebody who's been charged in the military. For God's sakes, Mr. Trump, you're asking to be the commander-in-chief, the leader of the free world. Up your game. As to women, if you want to kill terrorists, I am your guy.
Governor Huckabee. Governor Huckabee, ISIS demanded ransom before killing American hostages James Foley and Kayla Mueller. Their families wanted to pay, even though at the time the U.S. government discouraged them. Since then, U.S. policy has changed. As president, Would you support families of the approximately 30 Americans being held worldwide if they chose to pay ransom?
The horror that those families have to go through, if that were my son, my daughter, I'd give my last drop of blood to get them back. You bet I would. Is it a good policy? No. It's a terrible policy because once we do it, we're only going to invite more and more hostages, more and more ransoms, and the disaster gets even worse. But I don't blame these families. You know who I blame? I blame a policy in our government that has made it so that families are so desperate that they're willing to pay ransom to terrorist organizations because they don't believe our government will fight the fight for them, and they think they're out there on their own. My goodness, people, this is America. When did we have to start telling people that you've got to bake your own bread in order to fight the battles? That's what we have a government for. It's what we pay taxes for. And I believe those families ought to have a better expectation of what this government will do. We should never have sat at the table with the Iranians as long as Saeed Abedini is sitting in an Iranian prison, as long as the Washington Post reporter is over there. Until the 4 hostages of America were on an airplane safely out of Tehran, we should have told them, we won't even walk into the room with you, much less sit down and negotiate with you. That's what we ought to be doing.
Thank you, Governor. Governor Pataki. Speaking of those 4 Americans being held in Iran right now, Iran has suggested they might be willing to have a prisoner swap, release Iranian prisoners held in the United States in exchange for those 4 Americans. Would you support that?
You know, again, it comes down to something that, as Mike said, breaks your heart. We clearly want to get them back. But the idea that by taking a journalist, for example, and holding him hostage in Iran, they're going to be able to get some of their terrorist leaders back is simply bad policy. Israel has shown the way on this and rejecting hostage exchanges such as this and in not paying ransom. But by the way, Mike's absolutely right. We have to do more to protect our people overseas. But then we also have to do more to help our veterans when they come back here today. We haven't talked about that. But when we're talking about defeating terrorism, one of the things we have to do is give our veterans the support and help that they require. What has happened at the VA is a disgrace. Give our veterans a medical card that they can use to get the best quality care anywhere, including outside of the VA system.
We have to take a quick break, but Governor, Israel has exchanged a lot of the prisoners it was holding for Israeli soldiers who were being held by Hamas, for example.
But that was involved in combat, where they were actually involved in a war against each other and exchanged prisoners. We have not been in a war with Iran. They have taken civilians as hostages. It's a totally different situation, and we cannot encourage them to do any more.
Thank you. Let's take another quick break. The Scramble. Welcome back to the Republican presidential debate here at the Venetian in Las Vegas. Gentlemen, in the wake of the Paris terrorist attacks, the Obama administration policy of allowing Syrian refugees to come into the United States has come under fire. Senator Santorum, you say accepting Syrian refugees is dangerous. You say it just takes one jihadist to destroy the world. Do you think there is any way to properly vet refugees coming into the United States?
Of course there's a proper way to vet refugees coming into the United States, but not from the ISIS-controlled area or Syria. How can you do a background check? Where are you going to go? Who are you going to call? You call Assad and say, hey, well, let's, tell me about this guy from Aleppo. There's no possibility in these types of war-torn countries to adequately vet someone to allow them to come into this country. It's impossible. So you have a physical impossibility here. Secondly, we shouldn't be taking people out of that region and moving them here to the United States. And the reason we shouldn't is very clear. If you talk to the clerical leaders, particularly those who are religious minorities, they don't want their people to be relocated so they're never going to come back. And let me assure you, if they come to America, they're not going to come back. They're not going to go back to those areas. So who stays? Those who cooperated with ISIS, and maybe a few of the refugees who come back. We need to have refugee camps in the region. We need to provide no-fly zones to make sure that we don't even need refugee camps so people can stay in the area. But the last thing we need to do is to relocate moderate Muslims, relocate minorities and Christians out of the region so they're not going to return and reestablish a state that can be one that can be cooperative for us and safe going forward.
Governor Pataki, you have said you wouldn't accept a single Syrian refugee. What should become of them?
You know, I think what I said earlier is that I would create a no-fly zone in Syria. Turkey just agreed to take 3 million more Syrian refugees. The EU just came up with a funding program to provide camps for Syrian refugees. But I would also create that no-fly zone where refugees could be there. And I have to say I agree with Rick, because this president is talking about taking 10,000 people from Syria who we cannot vet. This administration allegedly vetted the woman who carried out the attacks in San Bernardino and never found out that she had a false address and was on social media talking about radical jihad. Coming from Syria, it's impossible to do that check. And we know, by the way, that ISIS is using this refugee program to send terrorists to the West to engage in attacks. They have said that this is an opportunity for them to do that. So the answer is no. No Syrian refugees, whether it's the 10,000 Obama wants or the 60,000 that Hillary Clinton wants. Think about it. I was governor on September 11th. Those attacks were carried out by only 18 people. We take 60,000 Syrian refugees that we can't vet. If 1 in 1,000 is a terrorist, we would have 60 terrorists living amongst us, looking to carry out attacks. We cannot let that happen.
Let's go back to Dana Basher, to Hugh Hewitt, for some more questions. Dana.
Governor Huckabee, the U.S. has a program that allows visitors from America's closest allies to travel to the U.S. without obtaining a visa. But new legislation in Congress says that privilege should not apply to those who have visited ISIS hotspots like Iraq and Syria in the last 5 years. You say that legislation doesn't go far enough. Why?
We just need to take a real pause in all the people that are coming here, and we don't know who they are, what their affiliations are. What George just said is right. We can't take the risk. And why should we take the risk? And if it's such a doggone good idea to bring people here that we really don't know who they are, and Obama thinks that we're being unchristian to not do it, I've got a suggestion. Let's send the first wave of them to Chappaqua, Martha's Vineyard, and the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and to the south lawn of the White House, where we'll set up a camp. Let's see how that works out. And if they behave wonderfully, that's fine. I want to say I don't want someone lecturing me about what it means to be a Christian, that I should invite a potential terrorist into my backyard. On one hand, the left says separation of church and state, let's not have any discussion of religion, and then the left wants to tell me what it means to be a Christian. They need to figure out, if they know more about being a Christian than I do, then tell me that they are no longer going to say separation of church and state. But we have the most fundamental right, above everything else, is not to protect the reputation of Islam. It is to protect Americans first and foremost. That is our job.